Hello. Welcome back to our final session on the importance of understanding the audience and the context.
Hi, thank you. Look, in the world of literary writing, whatever the writer you are a poet, you are a playwright, whatever the writing you are doing there, no matter at all, the act of crafting words is much more than putting or merging words or phrases to make sentences or complex sentences just to express somebody. No, writing is an intricate dance of communication. One must have to understand whoever is the writer, whoever is going to write something. One must have to understand writing is another way of communication. You are going to communicate your thoughts, your emotions, your sentiments, whatever you are having there. You are going to talk in another way of communication. Definitely, when you are standing before me or when you are on a call, right now, the people who are watching me, they are listening me. But the same thing, if I am going to communicate in a book way, or in a written way. So how I am going to do? So one must have to remember before writing, writing is another way of communication. You are going to communicate with your audience. You are going to communicate with the people whom you are going to interact, whom you are going to share your information, whom you are going to share your observations, whatever is there you are going to write. That's why writing is an intricate dance of communication, expressions, and resonance. You must have to understand writer is not just a story creator or the seller of information or the seller of feelings or the seller of emotions. No, but writer is a communicator, the communicator who is going to code, who is going to code their information or the feeling for the decoder, who is going to make the book to listen. I must have to say sorry to all those people who think that they are the reader of a book. If you are having a good script on writing, if you're having a good clip with the audience whom you are going to share your emotions, they won't read you. They will listen you. They will listen you in the way of communication. They will listen you as you are communicating with them, as you are standing before them. So a writer must be aware of the audience whom he or she is going to communicate. Definitely, when you are going to communicate with a one class student, and the same thing you are going to communicate with PhD student, your tone, your structure, and the way of talking, you definitely will change. You will see the way of talking, tone, and all these things are changing. Why? Because you are talking to the audience, to one class audience, and the same thing you are talking to PhD audience. That's why you are going to shape your communication according to the audience. The same thing you are going to do in your writing. If you are going to write a children book, you have to understand, you have to write in a simple way. You have to use simple phrases, simple words. If you are going to write poetry, if you are going to write novels and all, for the young listeners or readers, you must have to write in that way that resonates with them. In simple words, firstly, you must have to understand the audience, and you must be aware of the context in which the communication is going to be take place. So you must have to be understand of the context. The same thing I give you the example. The context is one class students, and the context is PhD students. Definitely, you are going to communicate in different way. In whether you are going to communicate verbally or whether you are going to communicate in your written form, you have to change the structure of the whole talk. The phrases, the words, you have to change accordingly, according to the audience. Let me give you one more example. Suppose you observe something in your life, and you are very attached to me. You are very attached to me, and you are coming home and you are going to write on WhatsApp, or you are going to write an email, and you are putting all the information or the observation in that email or in that message, and I'm going to decode that. Look the way you are going to communicate with your attached person. Look at the way you are going to talk to me. You are going to write to me. But the same observation, if you are going to convey to another person, suppose you are going to convey your information with your teachers or with your friend, with another friend, or the person who is not very attached to you, you will see your tone, your structure of your communication definitely going to be changed. Why? Because you know the audience. At one hand, you're having the closest person. At another hand, you are having a person who is not close to you. So you are changing the tone of your verbal or written communication according to the audience. So this is where the concept of audience and the context come into play. Before writing anything, there are a lot of things you have to understand regarding your audience and the context. Number one, if I talk, is audience engagement. How you are going to engage your audience with your literary pieces. A writer must have to be aware of the audience, because being as a human, we all are having different way of thinking, we all are having different way of expressions, we all are having different way of decoding anything, and we all are having different level of understanding, understanding the themes, understanding the emotions, understanding the feelings of the communicator. And the same thing, we all are having different way of communicating our emotions, feelings, observations, sentiments, and all these things are there. Like I already told you, writing for children requires different way of thinking, different way of structure, different way of tone as compared to the writing for the young people or as compared to adult people. So this is what you have to understand before writing: the engagement of the audience, how you are going to engage your audience with your literary pieces. Then we come to the sensitivity of the culture. You must have to understand the culture, the people, the background of the people whom you are going to communicate. Every person is belonging to different cultures. Okay, I am belonging to a different culture. You are belonging to another culture. And the person whom you are going to communicate is belonging to another culture. So you must have to understand your audience culture. Understanding the culture of your audience can help you to avoid misunderstanding and ensure that your writing is respectful, inclusive, and more people are going to interact by your writing. Look, definitely people from different places think differently, code differently. So you must have to understand whom you are going to communicate through your written communication, from which culture they belong, what's the background of your audience, what's the culture of your audience. All these things you have to keep in your mind to make your written pieces more impactful. In a simple word, if I say, whenever you are going to write, keeping in your mind who will read, where they come from, helps you avoid saying something that might be misunderstood or offensive. So it is about being simple, being respectful to the audience, being respectful to the background of the audience, and making sure everybody feels the same as you want to convey. The fourth thing you have to understand is the relevance. Whether your writing is relevant to the time and the place where you are, or whether your written communication is relevant to the audience whom you are targeting, or whether your writing is relevant to the context in which you want to talk. If you write about the things that are important and interesting, people will definitely find your work more meaningful, more interesting, more impactful. They will definitely find your communication spontaneous as you are communicating. So again and again, I am letting you, written communication is another form of communication. You are going to communicate with the people who are not standing before you. They are sitting in their homes, they are sitting in their context. So you must have to write in a way that resonates with them. Then you must have to understand related to your context and your audience is your purpose. The purpose of your writing, why you are going to write. Through your writing, the interest of your writers, you must have to understand before writing anything. So through your writing, what are the things they are going to get from your writing? What is the purpose of your writing? Why you want to write actually? This is the big portion you have to understand before writing any literary pieces, whether you are going to write poetry, whether you are going to write a novella, whether you are going to write a drama, or whatever is there, whatever you are going to write, you have to understand the purpose of your writing. The purpose of your writing, you must have to keep in your mind. Then the most important and very crucial thing is related to your literary themes and techniques, the different techniques in writing. Before moving towards any specific type of writing, one must have to understand whether you are going to introduce your own techniques, whether you are writing poetry, novel, or whatever you are writing, whether you are going to introduce your own rules, because language shapes their rules by a writer. Because Writers are those who are going to invent new rules, who are going to introduce new rules and regulation of any writing. So if you are a writer, I suggest you being as a writer, I suggest you follow some old rules. Definitely follow some old rules. But by following them, also introduce your own rules. Also introduce your own techniques in writing. The different techniques are new and unique techniques in writing, new rules and regulation in writing, because you are the writer. So whenever you are going to choose your own unique techniques in writing, you are going to follow the old techniques there. Whatever the techniques you are going to use, you must have to understand that your new techniques, your new ways, or the old ways, or the themes must be related to your audience, must be related to the context in which your communication is going to be take place. In a very simple word, if I say being as a writer, try to introduce your own techniques, your own ways of writing, your own ways of thinking, your own ways of decoding anything, your own ways of coding anything, whatever you are going to code, whatever you are going to communicate with your audience, whether it's a general audience or whether it's a specific audience, whatever is there, you must have to code in a new and unique way. In a very shortly, if I precise whole conversation, you must have to understand the audience and the context in which the conversation is going to take place. Whatever the literary writing you are going to do, whether you want to be a poet, you want to be a novelist, you want to be a philosopher, whatever you want to be, before writing any literary pieces, you must have to keep in your mind about your audience, context of your communication, and who will read it in return, and who is going to decode your communication. That's all about from my side. I love to hear from Dr. Craig now.
Hi, I'm Dr. Craig. I'm a professor of communications and of qualitative research. In this short segment, I'm going to address research writing. I'm particularly looking at those who are currently undertaking PhD research for this, but really everything I want to talk about applies to all early career academics and also other postgraduate researchers. Writing up research involves many facets: choosing a publication avenue, ensuring our research or our thought leadership is cutting edge, addressing the needs of the research community, and also addressing the needs of a wider community who benefits from or has some connection to the research that we're doing. For this section, I'm going to hone in on journal publishing, but I also recognize that the considerations that I'm talking about actually apply to all forms and all genres of publishing and researcher stakeholder outreach in academia that we might be involved with. But let's start with understanding our audience. The importance of considering our audience is particularly significant due to the nature and the depth and also the potential impact of our research. So there's a few specific considerations to think about when understanding what our audience will be. The first one is specialized knowledge. So academic research, especially at PhD level or even and beyond, is typically very highly specialized. It has a very niche market, but it also has people who understand the considerations well. When we consider our audience, it means recognizing the depth of knowledge that our readers already possess. We need to be able to present our research in such a way that demonstrates our understanding of the field's nuances, but also engages with the current state of the literature. Yet at the same time, we need to avoid that general introduction type material, which our stakeholders, our readers, will already have a solid grounding in. We're about adding value, not repeating what is already out there. A second consideration is the academic community at large. And beyond those that we engage with immediately, our research does contribute to a much broader academic community. And this is a global community. that we have to think about. So understanding the expectations of this global community, this academic community, through the different forums that they engage with and the different ways in which they engage with research is going to be absolutely crucial for us. Each academic community has its own conventions, its preferred approaches, and we've also got to make sure that as we are publishing, we're tailoring to make sure that the accessibility of our research meets the expectations of those broader communities. We need to think about, for the third one, interdisciplinary consideration. So if your research spans multiple disciplines, you also need to consider, how do I communicate effectively to an interdisciplinary audience? How do I get somebody from a different discipline that has an overlap with us, understanding and embracing the ideas that we're putting across? So this might be as simple as involving, bridging gaps in terminology, for example, maybe providing a little bit more background information that we normally wouldn't use, and also demonstrating the relevance of our work across the multiple disciplines that we're engaged with. Fourthly, some practical considerations. Our research hopefully has practical implications for, be it industry, policy, or other non-academic stakeholders. Considering how we're going to communicate this to our audiences is going to be essential, especially if we're trying to bridge that gap between the academic world and real-world applications of what we're doing, showing our relevance in community rather than just showing our relevance in university. I'm going to add in for number 5, teaching and mentoring, because, I feel that when we consider our audience in the teaching and mentoring context, it involves tailoring our expectations, our explanations, and our guidance to the level of understanding and experience of those who are benefiting from us. I think it's very important that we have to look at publishing as a teaching tool as much as a research or stakeholder outreach tool. So when we think about how our work can be used in teaching, that actually also helps us frame how we're going to write it and how we are going to express what we want. Sixthly, we talk about networking and collaborations, and communicating considering your audience in this context means being able to communicate your ideas effectively to potential collaborators, fostering connections, contributing meaningfully to collaborative projects. I think we always have to expect that a piece of research that we put across is the start of another piece of research, and that's likely to be something that could be collaborative in nature, and we have to use it as leverage. Now, understanding who our audience is and understanding that we want to connect with people of a certain caliber, a certain set of interests, a certain psychographic in this, helps us also to make sure that, our purpose of our research and the purpose of communicating the research through a journal article is not so much always just sharing that research, but it's also building those next steps for our career and for the development of our research. Seventh, I want to talk about funding agencies and grant reviewers. If your research is funded or if you're applying for research grants, understanding the priorities, the expectations of those funding agencies is crucial. And that's about tailoring your proposals to meet those criteria, but it also means tailoring your research publications to make sure that you address what you have promised you will be able to deliver. And sometimes it may be simply generating or curating a publication simply to meet the needs of that particular stakeholder because you said you would do it. And the final one, in terms of audience, that I want to consider is competitors, and bear with me for this. In academia, we have competitors. As academics, no matter whether we're doing our PhD, whether we're early career, or whether we're professors, as academics, we have competitors, and we're in a simultaneous collaboration and competition with other academics out there. So we need to consider this. It's important to protect and manage our reputation, to be seen as the cutting edge researcher that we are or that we're trying to be. Those who want to springboard your ongoing research to further their career and their metrics are also part of who our audience are going to be. And we've got to make sure that what we do through our publication is cementing our contribution first before they can springboard from that. It's important for us to know that every time we publish, we are potentially feeding somebody else's research, which might cut us out of a grant. So we have to not only be cautious, but we have to be able to frame it in such a way that we're seen as the expert first and foremost. Our audiences are certainly multifaceted. They range from colleagues, competing academics, the broader academic community, potential collaborators, and other non-academic stakeholders. So considering these audiences is going to be fundamental for the success and the impact of our publications. And impact in both in terms of the contribution to knowledge, which is what we're about as academics, but it's also in terms of solidifying our reputation in the field, i.e. Dr. Craig as the expert in this field, as the go-to expert. Now, let's turn our attention away from audience, but let's talk about context. So understanding context is fundamental in academic research, and this is why it's crucial. We'll start with relevance to existing literature. Understanding context allows us to position our research within the existing literature. This involves the typical identifying gaps, building on previous work, demonstrating how your research contributes to the ongoing scholarly conversation in our field. But it's also showcasing that we're not just sharing what's out there, we're value adding to it. So we want to make sure that what we write, what our output is, what our research communication is a genuine value add to the research community at large. Secondly, methodological considerations. Context informs our choice of research methods. Fantastic. Different fields, different research questions require and lead themselves or lead us to very specific methodologies. But understanding the context helps you select the appropriate methods that align with the standards and the expectations, but they also help us challenge the methods that we're using and become edgier, more innovative, more creative within that. Thirdly, let's look at ethical considerations. So each academic field has its own set of ethical considerations. Understanding the context ensures that your design, your methodology, both adhere to ethical standards and guidelines, but also it helps you negotiate what is for the greater good. When we are communicating our research through journal publications or any form of research output, being fully aware of any ethical implications from your conduct as a researcher, and also what it means, what your research means in the broader scope of things, is going to be absolutely essential. Number 4 is interdisciplinary connections, and it's sort of a little bit of a harking back to what I said just a short while ago. But if your research is interdisciplinary, and many of us are growing into or as interdisciplinary researchers, understanding the context of each discipline is crucial. So it helps bridge that gap in terminology, methodology, theoretical frameworks, and facilitating effective communication with scholars from different backgrounds. If you're undertaking interdisciplinary research, think about how your collaborators frame terminology, how they frame explanations. And from that, try to find a way that you can create appropriate middle ground with the way in which things are explained. Fifthly, target audience identification. So, that's everything I talked about in the first half, but knowing our context helps us identify the target audience we want. And this in turn helps us identify which publications we are most interested in, which publications do we want to target. We don't write an article and then go searching for publications. What we do is we think about what we're researching. We think about where are the target publications that we absolutely want. And then we tailor our writing to meet the needs of that publication's audience, but also the rules and the protocols that the respective publication has in mind of what it's doing. Sixthly, research funding alignment. So it's making sure that the context of our research priorities in our field is aligned with the funding that we're seeking, or the funding, if we're lucky, fingers crossed, funding that we have received. So funding agencies have specific areas of interest, strategic goals. It's also important that if we know what their particular areas of interest are and their particular goals are, that if they're funding us, our research should not counter or disrespect what they're going for. It's a political game. It's not about research in this, but it is a political game, and the fact that we have to play along and always keep, always keep the positivity up there as best as we can. And number 7, there are policy implications. So many of us, our research will have policy implications. So understanding political, social, economic context is absolutely crucial. This helps us to frame our findings in a way that's going to resonate with policymakers and really, we hope, address the real world challenges that are out there for us. Number 8 is about cultural sensitivity. So research often takes place within very specific cultural contexts. So understanding these contexts is essential for both ethically and culturally sensitive research, especially when we're working with human subjects, i.e. people, or studying some phenomena that is influenced by cultural factors. With internet, with Zoom, with everything that we're doing now, we are so much closer to the rest of the world, which means our research is going to be potentially cited overseas a lot more than, say, 5 or 10 years ago, or worse still, a lot more than when I started my career. So we've got to make sure that in our communication of our research, that we are very explicit with elements of cultural nuances that we need to put in there. Number 9, for real-world applications. So many of us will have research with practical applications. Understanding the real-world context is going to be vital. It helps to ensure that our findings are both theoretically sound, but also applicable and, more importantly, relevant to the challenges or the issues that we seek to address. There's no point in doing research that cannot be used to help someone when there is research out there that can. So it's very important that we can understand the role that our research is going to play in the world, but also making sure that we're communicating it so that it will play that role and it will contribute positively to society. And the final one is peer review and academic evaluation, because most of us, if we're publishing ethically, will go through a peer review process. There'll certainly be evaluation after it's published anyway. But when we present our research to peers, when we submit for publication, understanding the context ensures that your work aligns with their standards, their expectations, and really the standards and expectations of that broader academic community. Understanding the context in your research and in the communication of your research, the writing up of your research, is essential for framing the research, selecting the methodologies, identifying the audience, and ensuring that the relevance and the impact of your work within the broader academic community and the real world context is there. And ultimately making sure that we're publishing it in the right venue. Anyway, I wish you well with your research and with your publication journey. I hope my small contribution here has been helpful. Take care. Thank you.